Combined arms was not invented by Philip II of Macedon. There, I said it. Regardless of what Cora would say, combined arms is very old. It's as old as warfare itself. As long as you had two different weapons, like, say, this people with spears and people with bows, in this case, you had a form of combined arms, as long as you were developing tactics in which they were fighting together. Literally evident in the Iliad with the combination of people like Ajax and Teucros, where one was a shield-bearing armored spearman and the other was right behind him. Teucros, the archer, who ducked behind him, would pop out and spy his opportunities to shoot people. To an extent, you could also say that Hector and Paris, or Alexander as he would be more appropriately named, also fit this kind of relationship. It can also be seen as far back as, well, the Mycenaean period. The dagger of the lion hunt does show a formation of spearmen wielding spears in two hands, evidently for melee, and an archer ducking right behind them, trying to shoot the lion, which could be a lion itself. It could also be a metaphor for an enemy army. We also do see combat between spearmen and archers combined together in something like a pitched battle, I guess you could say, in the Mycenaean period as well. So it's very old. It is this social relationship between a protector and protectee, and vice versa. The person that you're protecting also protects you with their range. If you had an archer with you, you benefit massively with that. And those archers benefit massively from you having a shield and spear, because you can protect not just yourself with a shield and spear, but others around you who derive that protection as well. And the archer can protect you by providing the distance between you and your enemy to be able to affect that enemy line. Certainly after the Persian Wars, there is this romantic ideal that Greece was the land of the spear, and all Greeks who would be honorably called Greeks were all hoplites. They were all spearmen. All right, you know, they don't do the bow because the bow is stupid and gross, and you know, if a Greek was to pick up one of these, poof, immediately they're wearing trousers and speaking a foreign tongue. Either that, or that is if they don't just shrivel up and turn to dust almost immediately. Yes, this is great for aristocratic propaganda that people like Aeschylus kind of perpetuated. This is great for anybody of the aristocratic leisure classes who were mostly obliged to fight as hoplites. It's great to give themselves a morale boost and to convince as many people into the phalanx. The phalanx itself is a tactic that requires strength in numbers, so naturally you'd want more people to go into the phalanx, but at the same time, that hoplite phalanx desperately needs missile support, especially from archers. The reason why is pretty clear. When you look at campaigns like Aetolia, you look at the fact that they had more than just spearmen. They also had cavalry. They were facing enemy cavalry as well. One particular episode that I've talked about in my previous video was when the Spartans and the Athenians were fighting Persian cavalry. Hoplites couldn't necessarily affect that cavalry if all they're doing is running in, throwing javelins and shooting arrows and then coming out. They are not easy to come to grips with, as Herodotus said. But if they had archers there, right beside them, just behind them, those archers can target that cavalry and use their range to be able to neutralize that cavalry. So that way, it kind of cancels them out. Personally speaking, a theory that I have is that probably the main reason why the phalanx itself developed, as in men standing literally shoulder to shoulder, is because of increasing sophisticated developments in Greek mainland cavalry, like the Thessalians, the Athenians themselves. So it was either reactive to enemies adopting cavalry more so than they already had. The infantry that would normally stand in broader formations might have to come closer together and present spears to be able to ward them off, so that way the cavalry does not run them down. But at that point, cavalry would react to that, so cavalry became more hit and run. If you have a close ordered hoplite phalanx that acts like a wall that's warding off cavalry trying to run down infantry. Then that cavalry can just decide, we're not going to run down this infantry, we're just going to keep coming in, throwing these heavy javelins, and these heavy javelins, especially against people with armor, can pack quite a punch, and especially with the increasing power of a horse riding forward, that also adds to the element of speed that this will give. And then that horse can immediately ride back around very quickly before any javelin men can throw their spear against that horseman. So it becomes very difficult for hoplites to actually deal with cavalry hit and run tactics, which is why they desperately needed people who wielded these, and they were not always just mercenaries. The thing is that these can shoot arrows faster than anybody can shoot, well, or throw javelins for the most part. So they're a lot quicker, they can get to their target a lot faster, and they're a lot shorter tempo. All you have to do is just pull and loose compared to the footwork that you would need for throwing a javelin. Slingers can't really do this as effectively because they need more space, so they couldn't be inside a more tightly fit phalanx of hoplites like archers could, because they, again, like I've explained in my other video, don't need very much distance or breathing room to be able to use their bows. You can use it in a wide variety of spatial situations. Slingers definitely need space, so they were either in front of the phalanx or directly behind the phalanx. If they were in front of the phalanx, they could only engage those horsemen, or really anybody, from very long distances before they got too close. By then, they would need to retreat behind the phalanx, where 5, 6, 7, 8 men deep, they can't see what they're shooting at. So there's no shooting over the phalanx with slings, or really with anything. You need to see what you are shooting at. This is not medieval 2 Total War, or you just shoot up like this. You have ineffective arrows, ineffective stones at that point, and you can't even arch stones anyways going upward like that. Don't listen to video games. Thucydides, of course, says that, as per usual, when light infantry are fighting each other before a hoplite mass battle, it's just kind of this affair that it's just this footnote. But we should not end it there. Imagine for one moment that an army only brings hoplites, and then another army brings hoplites and skirmishers. Well, those skirmishers are not being counteracted by skirmishers from this other army, and so therefore the skirmishers of that army can just keep going to work on those hoplites before they even begin meleeing the enemy hoplites. The enemy hoplites can also delay the melee as long as possible until their skirmishers run out of ammo, and by that time they've already given attrition out to the hoplites here. So in order for hoplites to even work, they needed skirmishers in order to counteract other skirmishers, to counteract other cavalry. The cavalry would have to be able to run in and run down those skirmishers if they were in front of the phalanx, and if those skirmishers were in front of the phalanx and they went behind the phalanx, the archers within that hoplite formation can then target that cavalry. So it becomes a very complicated system of combined arms warfare that everybody had a kind of a rock, paper, scissors effect on each other. That's the best way to kind of simplify it. Different troop types are sort of a rock, paper, scissors, but especially it's more of a 4-dimensional one. Archers and hoplites together makes the archers more effective and makes the hoplites more effective. Skirmishers with a hoplite phalanx, like javelin throwers and slingers, make both the hoplites and the whole army more effective. It was not just hoplites versus hoplites. It's not hoplite warfare. That's not what ancient Greek warfare was. It always has been forms of combined arms where everybody fights together. There was a unique stint at the Battle of Marathon where they did not do this. The Persians were known for having thousands of archers that could cloud the sky, and then just by sheer volume alone could kill masses of people if they did not have armor and shields. So whatever archers, slingers, or skirmishers that they would have had, if they went in front of them and tried to skirmish the Persians, that was a suicide mission. no matter how good your skirmishers are going to be, they're never going to survive a tactic like that. So what they effectively decided to do, what Miltiades decided to do, was just to not have skirmishers there. They're just going to get as many people into shields and armor as possible that are going to band very close together just to be able to resist those arrows just enough, and then they're just going to shout "Oorah" and charge, and they're just going to force a melee out of them so that way they can't use their bows. That was a unique situation. By the Second Persian War, they were right back to combined arms because now there's this expectation that they're fighting cavalry, they're fighting slingers, they're fighting all these other things that isn't just infantry archers combined with spearmen. Of course, they did still force a melee because that's the best way to neutralize archers, is just to not give them the distance that they needed. And then through the classical period with things like sieges where they needed to reach people on walls needed to reach down, we're right back to combined arms again. It's not just a series of pitched battles. You had sieges, you had naval warfare. Again, naval warfare, there is a distance between your ship and that ship. It just makes sense that you would use arrows or other sort of missile weapons to be able to reach people on that side of the ship. Again, it was not just melee, okay? There were not knuckleheads. In summary, combined arms was a regular occurrence. Archers can mitigate cavalry, they can mitigate other skirmishers like they tried to do until the Athenian archer captain was killed at the Athenian campaign in Aetolia. So they were fighting light-armed javelin men, and the archers were very effective until their captain got killed. But once it proves that once those archers are no longer there, the hoplites really can't do very much to stop javelin throwers as long as those javelin throwers, say, have ammunition. Cavalry can run down javelin throwers and skirmishers and, in general, loosely formed people. But if a bunch of armored spearmen present their spears in close formation, cavalry cannot run them down as easily because they'd be running their horses into a wall of spears, which is a suicide mission. So they would rely on hit and run tactics, throw their javelin and run out, where then the archers within a hoplite formation can shoot those cavalrymen. Slingers can engage at extreme distances, so they can already start affecting attrition on an enemy formation before the melees start coming in. Missile troops are great for just starting attrition out before the hoplites have a chance to get into a melee, because again, you want to be affecting their numbers before you start actually engaging a melee. You want to make it as unfair for them as possible, all right? Warfare is not fair unless you're an idiot.